Hi, and welcome to the Lensrentals podcast, where we talk about images and the people who make them. I'm Roger Sakala, the founder of Lensrentals.com.
Hi, I'm Ryan. Welcome to the Lensrentals podcast. Today I'm talking with Emma Huckstadt from 0.0. If you as a listener are not familiar with 0.0 as a company, you're definitely familiar with their work. 0.0 collectively has won 15 Primetime Emmy Awards. They've won 5 James Beard Awards, and we're going to briefly earn our explicit tag on iTunes. They've won a fucking Peabody Award, which is extremely impressive. 0.0 produced Mind of a Chef, Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain. Recently, Elvis Goes There. And Emma, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, happy to be here. Happy to get a chance to talk to you guys. I love Lensrentals.
Thank you. That is good to hear. We appreciate it.
That's a completely unsolicited compliment. I love you guys.
We are not paying for ads here, folks. 0.0 are a client of ours. We love working with them. And so it's great to hear it's worked out so far.
And I know we just won 2 more Emmys last weekend, so that was super exciting.
Congratulations.
So finding off of that high for the final season of Parts Unknown, we got a Best Program, and Anthony Bourdain got the Best Writing. So
that's awesome.
Bittersweet but beautiful.
And I think I probably speak for many of our listeners when I say that show was formative for me. I do a lot of documentary work.
You have no idea, man. Like, I remember coming home after school, like in middle school and high school, and being like, oh my God, No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain is on television. I want to watch that because all I want to do is like travel around the world. This guy's awesome. To find out, like, you know, I get this job. I do like that really fast, like before you go into an interview for a job where it's just like, I'm going to find out who they are, what they do. And I'm like, oh my God, that guy, that's so awesome. And then to get to work on the show it was definitely a very humbling experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And that's where I want to start. So I looked you up on IMDb, and it looked like you started as a PA. Is that right?
I did. I went to film school, and, you know, it's definitely not for everybody, but I definitely learned a lot there and definitely picked up a lot of PA stuff here and there, mostly just like small indie projects, whether it be like my friends who were doing their class project, but they were able to get like this extra thing or this extra person or this industry guy is helping around. But I didn't get too involved in like union PA work or anything like that. I think so far my only like IMDb worthy PA credit was on the last Batman movie, where I had a very romantic cold weekend doing lockups on Wall Street. That was the first toe into the like grown up version of being a PA.
I do not miss lockups. I was a PA for a long time as well, and I'm not going to do this, but I could sit here and talk to you about PA work for an hour, I'm sure.
I know. I think my favorite just kind of like anecdotal story from just that shoot was like, you know, it's Batman, so we're on Wall Street. There's like lockup PAs, but there's also like legitimate like security guards there too. And there's just like paparazzo. He's like supposed to be in the pen on the other side, but he like body checks me out of the way. And then the security dude that I was with just goes running after him and just tackles him down. I'm like, oh my God, that's really badass. That's terrifying. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this forever.
For our listeners who have not worked 20-hour days for $10 an hour as a PA, anytime you see a frame of a movie, to the left and right where the frame ends, there are PAs making sure strangers don't walk into the frame and ruin a shot. So
and sometimes you're definitely lucky where it's just like you get the legion of PAs where it's just like there's one on everyone. Other times it's just one sad person who's been left alone for hours. It's just like, guys, I'm really sorry. I know you want to get home and your apartment's right over there, but please, can we just wait until it cuts, please?
That was me. Wide shots. Oh. On wide shots, I'm like, I worked in North Carolina, coastal North Carolina, and people would shoot on the beach, would shoot straight down the beach, right? So you're seeing a lot of landscape. I'm a mile, maybe 2 from actual set. Just stand there for 4 hours, keep your mic on, and be alone with your thoughts on the beach.
It's definitely a very meditative experience.
What do you think you got out of that work that has served you the best in your current position?
I think honestly, in my current position, it's understanding, because now I have a staff of 5 people and things like that, and I have my own PAs and stuff like that. I think it really gave me an appreciation as somebody higher up the chain of command to, you've been there before, you know how crappy it can be, and to never forget where you came from. And these people are doing the same thing. These could be the same people that like 5-10 years from now, you could be answering to. I think it's definitely a treat everybody like they're a human, and don't forget to bring them hot hands when it's cold out.
That's perfect. Yeah. Too little of that, unfortunately. Basic empathy is really helpful.
Not only that, but you get a lot of really great like horror stories of just like, dude, I remember this one time when I was a PA and it was awful. You get a lot of like those good stories that definitely, I think they bring common ground into the industry, because everybody's always had that one shoot, that one job where just like, oh, dude, this was awful. You're just kind of working to never have to experience that awful again.
Can you walk me through a little bit about how you moved from PA work into what you're doing now?
Sure. So I actually started 0.0 as a PA like 5 years ago, so 2014. And I have been, doing more indie work. I was doing sound stuff. I did AD stuff for a while, but nothing like too horribly serious where it was just like, I really need like a consistent day-to-day job where I'm guaranteed like 40 hours a week. So when I was in school, I actually worked in the gear department of my alma mater, the School of Visual Arts here in New York City, and met a lot of great people there. That's how I got involved in a lot of different shoots, things like that, which was great. And so, I'm just like trolling the internet one day. I'm like, God, I really need a job. My student loans are coming due. I'm tired of living with my parents. So I found this random posting where it was just like, hey, we're looking for like a PA for like a temp job for like 3 months who can do like go on runs and just like do general like gear returns. And like, you don't really know that much, but sometimes you have to be real, like here really early in the morning and here really late at night. So I applied to that. Come to find out that one of the people that made that posting was my old manager at SVA, the equipment manager there. So I get an email from him and he's just like, hey, come on in, let's do this interview. And it was more or less just kind of like for formality's sake and everywhere. And so I had the 2 guys with me and they're just like, we remember you from SVA, you've got this, come along. It's a 3-month gig because our current PA is out on sick leave. He injured himself. So we just need somebody to fill the gap until he can get back. It's not the consistent job that I'm looking for, but at least it's consistent for the next 3 months. And fortunately for me, when the old equipment PA came back, he was like, I really don't want to do this anymore. So I ended up getting his job, which was great. And then suddenly it's cool, you're basically permalance, you're here. And then we got busy. So I got bumped up pretty quickly to be an equipment tech, which is, our day-to-day hands-on person that is checking all the gear before it goes out, quality control checking, and also usually ends up being a liaison of like a crew in the field. If they have questions, you're the last one to touch it. So you might have a better idea about that. And then I've just been kind of moving up since then.
And how would you describe your day-to-day job responsibilities now?
So now I work as the equipment manager of our entire department. So to give a little context of, and I'm sure we'll touch on it maybe later also, but 0.0 owns most of our own gear. There's definitely some things that we need to go out of house to get, whether it's we only need this for a week or something like that. Of course, that always happens. But for the most part, we own almost all of our own gear for all of our shows. So my day-to-day is working with the line producers, production managers, and coordinators to figure out when their shoots are. A lot of the times there is a schedule because we have a host. So it's very easy to plan that out. But sometimes there's oh my God, we're going to Kenya tomorrow. We just got approved to go out. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So then it's working with that and then working with my equipment techs and everybody that works for me to get all that gear prepped, QC'd, inventoried, any last minute notes that our crews could have, dummy checking, and then putting a bow on it and sending it out into the world to get it checked out.
And a production company owning their own gear entirely is relatively uncommon, right?
I think it's uncommon. I think it's becoming a little more common. And I guess it also depends on the production company. Like if you have a company like, I think Vice, they own a lot of their own gear, but they're sending out maybe like a camera or two. They're not sending out like a full audio package or lighting, grip, electric. They're not sending out the full package of like everything that leaves from here is everything you need to make this episode, this shoot happen. So yeah, I think it's getting a little common, but I also think that just on the scale of how much and what we send out is definitely a lot more than most other production companies do.
How many shows are you all running concurrently?
Concurrently, right now, I think we're working on 3 network shows right now, which are like 4 shows because 2 of them have, or rather, one show has multiple crews running at once. So we treat that as if they're 4. And then we have a smattering of like, we're working on a new movie documentary. We're doing some pilots now. We're also working on another like long form project. So I think at our most, it's probably like 8 or 9 shows at once, which is a lot for us, for a company our size, and specifically for a department the size of mine to get all of that out the door is pretty darn remarkable.
That's a ton. Yeah. How many employees are like in your department?
In my department, there is 5 of us, counting myself. So yeah, usually what we'll do with that is each of my 3 techs are assigned a show. And so it's like, okay, so you're going to be the main point person on this show. You've got this one, you've got that one. If something happens, somebody's not there, any of them can jump into another show. But it's nice to have that consistency of like, hey, you know, the weird thing that happened on that last episode that they want you to check out, make sure that that doesn't happen again. Or, you know, that this DP likes his camera set up a little bit that way. It helps with that consistency. And then any other like shoots or shows that will come up on top of our regular shows are just kind of like, cool, you're not horribly busy this week, hop into that. Or, you know, even I'll jump in sometimes just because I miss touching gear behind a computer all the time.
What, if any, role do you or your department generally have in choosing or recommending which gear gets used for a particular show or shoot?
We do have a decent role. Myself specifically and my inventory specialist, we work together. We're kind of like the management of our department. And it's very much, we'll work with like our line producers kind of early on when they're getting budgets ready to go to just networks and everything, where it's like, hey, we're looking to put together this show and it's going to be like 3 crews running concurrently. It's for Netflix, so it has to be 4K. And we're going to be going international. So it's like and we're maybe shooting the first quarter to the second quarter of 2020. So since we own our own gear, we're going to always favor using what we have in house. We're pretty set up well for that, but then it'll be like, oh, okay. So I'm going to look at my calendar. Cool. We have like 3 FS7 packages that are all available for that chunk of time. Let's put that down. They'll throw in their budget and it goes from there. And, you know, it's usually months previous before even it's greenlit or any kind of principal photography starts, where we're starting to consider this of just what's available and kind of then going from there. Once it gets greenlit, then we'll shoot it off to like our DPs that will be going out with them, our camera guys, and be like, here's a really basic package. It is camera, a little bit of lighting, a little bit of audio. What else do you think you need? in order to make this show after talking to the directors about creative. What else do you think you need? And then we'll have a good back and forth. And then that's where I come in a lot with the camera dudes, where it's just kind of like, hey, I want to be able to do this. And it's working between the camera department as well as the production department to figure out a budget that will work long term for the duration of their 20-week shoot or something like that. Whether that be, other resources that we have in house but don't default send out, like maybe they want a Dana Dolly or something because they're doing a lot of like sweeping B-roll. It's like, cool, I have that. Or, oh no, I don't have that. Let me go out, figure out, do we want to source that locally, or do we want to find that here in New York, hold on to it for a run of show, and then just go off?
Right. And are your crews sent out typically traveling with the gear, or
Yes.
is it okay? So
Yes.
I imagine, is size a concern?
Size is a massive concern. All of our crews really do travel with almost all of their gear. It's really rare when we're shipping anything anywhere. If we there's of course exceptions to it where I don't know, last week we had to do a pickup shoot out in LA. The director was going to be flying in the day before, so there was no time to get things locally, and their gear wasn't being used. So we ended up overnighting it out to LA, which of course is always nerve wracking because it's just like, oh God, what if it doesn't get it there in time? What if something breaks? What do we do?
Right.
But for the most part, I'd say 95% of all of our shows travel with 95% of all of the gear that they need. And that can be, I think now we've almost shot across all of our shows on every corner of the world, which is crazy pants to think about. But yeah, and the logistics are definitely tough. Sometimes it's really easy where it's just because we're taking commercial airlines. It's not like we're sending it cargo. It's literally maybe a 3-person crew roll up to out here JFK with 10 cases of gear that needs to be checked, and they're bringing their cameras on as a carry-on, and it's just hello, we're here, we want to check all of this. And usually the production coordinators will get a media rate or something with the airline, but we've definitely had our logistical nightmares. I don't know, 2 weeks ago, we were sending a show out to South Africa and Chad for a week-long shoot. And we find out the day before they need to leave that the airline is oh, well, you only have 2 people leaving. So that means each person can only take 5 checked bags. That includes all of their personals. So suddenly it's just cool. Well, from our department with all of this gear, it was going to be 15 checked hard Pelican cases. Now we can't take all of that. What do we do? And so myself and the tech worked really, really quickly with the DP to basically be okay, we're going to repack it this way. We'll move a couple things around, but you can't take everything. And that's the worst thing to have to tell a DP, especially if they're just coming into the ZPZ fold, because I've packed gear for Africa before with that kind of awful, just kind of we need all of these things, but you can only take so many things with you. So it's just you know what, you've got 4 zoom lenses. Can you cut that back? Cool. Yes, you can. Now you have room for that. This thing takes up an entire case on their own, and you just wanted that just in case. How about we drop that? And we were able to fortunately, really get it down. And they were able to get there and go, and it was perfect. So that worked out well. If you have time, I also have another more nightmarish anecdote that was just all logistics on the front end. But
we've got nothing but time.
Excellent. I love this story because I am blonde, a very bright blonde. So I worry that some parts of my job have given me gray hair, and I'll just never notice until it's way too late. But this was probably my first gray hair where on Parts Unknown, they were going to do a back-to-back shoot where they were going from Rome to China. And we got this really dope package. We shot the episode of Rome on Parts Unknown, fully anamorphic on F5's anamorphic glass.
Yeah, I remember that one. That is a gorgeous episode.
It's a gorgeous episode. It
looks great. And it's so, one of the cooler things about that show is it's aesthetically, the look can vary a lot from episode to episode.
Well, yeah, and that was definitely one of the cool things that I learned about that. And I can definitely touch on that a bit also about, if you want to hear specifically working on like Parts Unknown like that with our DPs and stuff. But so when they were going from Rome to China, you know, we were very much like, okay, cool. So we want to do this. Tony wants to do it in anamorphic. All the guys want to do this. We've never done it before. Let's do it. So myself and the equipment manager at the time were here early every morning because we're like, you know what? It's such a special package that we need so much for. Let's see if we can rent it in Rome or somewhere close to it. So he and I are on the phone talking to Germany and Italy and everywhere because of the time difference. We have to get here at like 6 o'clock in the morning to talk to them before they go to lunch or anything crazy like that. And so we ended up actually sourcing it, the entire package here in New York, thanks to Abel Cine all the way out in Brooklyn. But the fun caveat was they were going to go from Rome, and a lot of the guys were going to fly from Rome directly to their next shoot in China. And because of airline restrictions, you could only take so many things with you to China because we only have one person leaving from New York to go to China, and he can't take the regular 20-case Parts Unknown package.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of logistical nightmare early on where it's just like, okay, so we have gear from Able that has to go to Rome and then come back here, but we also have 0.0 gear that has to go to Rome. Some of it needs to come back to New York, but some of it needs to go to China. And then we have another package that's half coming from New York to meet up in China, and just like the paperwork and getting the traveling ACs and DPs on board of like, this has to go here. If it does not, the Chinese government will confiscate it because it's not on the paperwork. So please don't do that. Please, 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 please don't do that. And it was definitely a week I don't regret if I forget about it, because it was just very tough. And, you know, the Parts Unknown production management team, they just killed it. And my guys killed it. And it was just so crazy. And then, you know, it all gets back here and it's just that like heavy sigh of relief of like, awesome. It went off better than we could think. And we definitely got 2 incredible episodes out of it.
I'm jealous of your job, but also not at all jealous of your job. This sounds very adventurous, but also very stressful.
It can be. It can be. Fortunately, I'm super lucky to work with like a lot of really great, really talented people here at ZPZ. It's a hurdle, but you get over it.
Well, we'll take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk to you about some of your kind of go-to gear, what you all use and why.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
Hi, I'm Allie Aycock Patterson. I work in video product development at Lensrentals, and this is a spotlight on the Insta360 Titan. When we started carrying Insta360 products, I realized that there was maybe some promise of professional filmmaking or cinema use for VR360 cameras, even within a unibody camera like the Insta360 Pro, Pro 2, and now the Insta360 Titan. The Titan really shows us, because it's an 11K cinema camera, that Insta360 is constantly going to push the boundaries on resolution and challenge our notions of VR not being something that we can use in traditional filmmaking. Some quick specs on the Titan. It can do photos and 2D video up to 30 frames per second at a whopping 11K resolution. It can do 3D video up to 10K, which is insane. And if some unfathomable resolution is not really something you're looking for in the Titan, they upgraded the 8K footage that was found in the Pro 2 to be 10-bit. So now you have a true professional 8K video standard that you didn't see in previous VR cameras, and that truly we never really thought was going to happen. The Titan, I will say, is kind of intimidating. It's a large camera. It looks like a giant kettlebell. It is, with the battery, roughly 15 pounds. The way it captures this insane resolution is it has 8 micro four thirds sensors in the housing. Each sensor has a 200-degree fisheye lens. It's a f3.2 per lens, and each lens is capturing roughly 180 megabits per second. So you're getting really, really strong details, even in the shadows, corner to corner. So some odd things about the Titan. If you've used the Pro 2, you're probably already used to the memory card situation. The Pro 2 shoots on micro SDs and 1 SD card. The Titan shoots on 8 SD cards and a 9th one for proxy. So each sensor is getting its own SD card. If you're working in video with it, it can be kind of a challenge because of the file structure, because you have a dedicated memory card per sensor and lens, and then that proxy one. So you've got to figure out a way to be able to pull all of the footage in together. Not only are we talking about having tons of cards, we're talking about having lots of USB hubs so that you can do it all simultaneously. The transfer times aren't fast. I transferred a few minutes of footage, and it took probably longer to transfer than it did to actually record. So that's something that you're going to have to take into consideration when you're shooting with this thing. The battery is huge. You do get 70 minutes of continuous shooting on a single battery charge, but then it's going to take roughly 3 hours to charge back up. And that huge battery is also contributing roughly 2 pounds of the camera's overall weight, which is kind of insane. So overall, I think the Insta360 Titan 11K is really going to set a new standard for VR360 work. I don't know that most people, especially if you're just doing like architectural photography or something like that, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of need for it at this point. I think moving forward, though, this will become an industry standard. I think there will be a higher expectation of what VR360 cameras can do. The camera itself, again, it's large. It's kind of intimidating. There are some design flaws that may or may not come to fruition. I'm a little concerned about them breaking. But so overall, the Insta360 Titan, I really think sets a new industry standard for what we can expect from VR and 360 cameras, even though if at this time it may not be something we're all needing. I do think moving forward, it will be something that is readily adopted by people shooting this kind of footage. This was a spotlight on the Insta360 Titan. You can find the link in the show notes.
All right, welcome back. I'm with Emma Huckstadt, the equipment manager at 0.0, and we're going to talk about some of the gear she uses and why. I guess I'll start with lenses. You all shoot mostly documentary stuff, so I imagine it's a lot of zoom lenses, or does it vary?
It really does vary on what show, what the situation is, things like that. We definitely do have a lot of zoom lenses, but we definitely send out a bunch of primes also. Like for the most, well, it's less so now, but for our go-to like lens package for quite a while was a couple of Fujinon Cabrio 19-90s. That was kind of like the go-to workhorse lens. And then Zeiss Super Speeds, which have always had that really like beautiful, like that's what most of Parts Unknown like guts were shot on, like Super Speeds. But of course, like, you know, every once in a while you're like, I want an ingenue and this and that. So we've definitely seen a lot of stuff, but those were the Fuji 19-90s, and the Super Speeds have definitely been our workhorses in the past. Shooting on Sony F5s, we're pretty deep in Sony cameras here. So most of what we have shot in probably the last 5 years have been predominantly on either Sony F5s, 55s. Right now, we're really into the Sony FS7 Mark IIs because they've been fabulous for our Netflix workflow. And with those, we usually send along like a set of Rokinon zines. And also, we recently just keep renting the Fujinon MK series. We're actually renting those from Lensrentals right now because we're not sure if we want to buy them just yet. We're not ready to take that plunge because it'd be us buying 10 of each like lengths, because there's the 18 to 55 and the 50 to 135. And, if we're sending one camera out, usually we'll send them with the full length. So it'll be a camera has an 18 to 55, and it also has the 50 to 135, but so does B camera. So for every 2 camera gear package, it's buying 4 lenses, and everyone here is scared by buying glass because it's expensive. But, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's like, hey, Lensrentals, I'm going to need a lot of glass.
Yeah, luckily we carry a ton of those MKs. And yeah, relative to like the 19 to 90, it's not too expensive.
It's not, especially now, like when we bought them first, when they came out, that was right before me. I think they were like at that $40,000 price tag that just makes you go, oh God. But they've definitely gotten a lot not like a lot cheaper, but a little bit easier to swallow of the price, especially if you get them like secondhand from a good, like reputable source. They're beefy. Especially they can be hard on our guys sometimes, where it's like we're shooting 12 hours today and it's all like shoulder and handheld, but it all has to be run and gun, so we don't have time for primes. So if it's something where we're sitting down and we know there's a lot of like interviews and stuff like that, we're allowed to get a little bit more like, oh, let's get fancy with some primes.
And you mentioned the F55 and the FS7. So you all are mostly on Sony bodies?
Correct.
Why is that?
Honestly, it's very much a legacy thing. By the time I got here, we were so deep into Sony, and it works well with our workflow because not only do we do all the creative here, we do all the shooting here, we also do all the editing here. So our post facility was so deep into just like the Sony workflow and things like that, that it was just like, we know how to deal with this. It's also a lot of it too is like all of the accessories that we already have, where for every camera we have a monitor, but that monitor is not necessarily going to be just slapped on a Noga arm, and we have base plates and we have shoulder mounts and all of that. So keeping it in the same family has always been a little bit easier for us.
I'm curious, at least the vast majority of your projects are documentary based. What are your lighting packages like? Is it mostly natural, or are you mostly, I assume, just supplementing existing location light?
A lot of it is that. It depends on the shoot. We definitely have a lot of location light and like fast lenses, but so far our go-to actually been Astras, which have been absolutely fabulous for us, where they're just like, they're lightweight, they travel well for the most part. Overall, if they're in a hard case, they're both AC powered, as well as you can throw an Anton Bauer battery on them and they'll run for hours while you're out in the field. We're also starting to get into the quasars, the QLEDs, which are the ones that have like the magnetic backs to them, and they're totally rechargeable. And the new ones are really nice because you can be charging them while the light is running. I think like the last iteration of them, you could only be either using it or charging it and not both.
We just started carrying those Quasar QLEDs, and those are awesome. I agree. It's a really, really versatile, like lightweight.
They're great, and they pack really well for us. Like we do have a couple of the older Quasar crossfades that are like 4 foot long. Those aren't the most like travel friendly, and they'll only power themselves by AC. The other problem with that is they're not variable voltage. So it will only work as like a 120 volt, or if you are traveling to like Europe or almost anywhere else in the world where it's 240, then it's like, okay, either I need to get a converter or you need to just buy an entirely different fixture.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that. These are the things that you have to worry about that I don't have to worry about.
I have learned so much about what every country uses in terms of voltage and their plug adapters. It makes my own personal vacations a lot easier to just have these considerations.
Your shows, I'm going to struggle to describe this in an elegant way.
You can say they look fucking nice.
They look fantastic. They're really, and it seems like there's a lot of effort put into making them not only pretty, but unique, even episode to episode.
Yeah, that was definitely like a really wonderful part about like working on a show like Parts Unknown, where every episode was different in some way, where it would be like, hey, we want to do this entire episode on anamorphic lenses, or hey, we're going to this place and we need to just make it look really nice in like a weird way. And just like listening to like our DPs talk, we're just like, Like, I don't come from a background of being like a shooter or anything like that. I got into like gear and stuff while I was like directing, and I didn't want to sound dumb when I'm like, put the lens on the thing and make it look like this. So I want to like have that language in order to like talk to people, but it always still like legitimately blows my mind when like a DP or just like anybody is just like, I have this really fucking great idea and this is how we're going to do it. Like, I think my favorite rig ever was just kind of like, and he still uses it sometimes, where it's just kind of like, instead of like an Osmo or anything, he's just like, one of our guys is taking a boom pole and on the end putting like a Sony A7S. And he's just using that to like basically make himself a jib on the fly. And it's not like perfect, but then when you see just like these sweeping shots of him just getting like close up of just like water down a river, and you're like, oh my God, was that a jib? No, it's Todd using a boom pole now. And it's just like, that is so creative to me. And it really does give that extra just kind of oomph, which I think really distinguishes us in just terms of like quality, and nothing's hacky. Everything from like our guys who have won like the cinematography Emmys and everything like that to just not random people, but just like people that we don't work with as usual are just like, they know the expectation is there and they want to do well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it's about, I guess, is like doing what you can with what you have.
Yeah.
I think you all have set a genuine new standard for documentary cinematography.
Well, thank you. I do like to think so, where our guys definitely like, even if it's just a simple sit down interview, it's just done so thoughtfully.
What do you think is the biggest technical hurdle you've had to overcome?
I think the biggest technical hurdle for us in recent times, well, actually just kind of recently, was it's adapting us to live in a 4K world, because the way that ZPZ came to be, this is long before my times, was, we're shooting on tape. You're shooting mini DV tape and everything like that. And that's so easy to just come across in the world, where it's just like, oh, we're out here in Beirut for like a week and a half and we've run out of some tapes. That's okay. Just go down to the store. You can buy that. And so we still want that quality of being able to go out and shoot for as long as we need to. Sometimes they're up to like 10-day, 11-day shoots on location, where you're not going to find a rental house or find a place that you can like buy a drive. So I think there was a time when we were shooting S-by-S cards that ZPZ was the largest private owner of S-by-S cards, because we had, I want to say, up to 400, because we're not doing backups in the field, which is the most horrifying thing ever. So we'd solve that, where it's just like, okay, so they're going out, we're going to send them out 32 cards, but they're going to go out with like a 60 card set, and that will be more than enough for like the 3 camera like interviews they have to do and B-roll. But where that gets more and more difficult is when you get into the 4K world. And with Netflix especially, and Apple's getting into it, and I'm sure there's a lot of others that are also making 4K their absolute standard. Doing that same style of shooting gets really expensive really fast. So now we're shooting on FS7s. Those have definitely been our like Netflix workhorse. But then we have another show right now, Somebody Feed Phil, where they're out for 3 weeks at a time shooting 4K. They're shooting Sony F55s with the R7 recorders, shooting XOC NLT. Which the only way we're able to send them out is we have a media manager go with them, and those guys crush it. They're up all night just like downloading everything, getting notes, where it's just like, hey, you need to do like an APR on this camera because I'm seeing like a weird pixel over here. Try fixing that, and which is great, where it's like any problems are just like, we can fix that there.
Can you talk about any of the projects you're working on right now, or what you're excited to maybe work on in the future?
Yeah, we've definitely got a bunch of shows that just finished up in post. We've got the 2nd season of Rotten on Netflix and its sister show, Broken, which is very similar, but it's all about like, it's like industrial crimes. Instead of it being like food and everything like that, it's very much like, oh, they're not putting the correct type of like gold on the circuit boards in this country, and that's why it's causing it to fry, like things like that. That's really exciting. As I said, we're working on the second season of Somebody Feed Phil. They're like 3 episodes in, so that's really exciting. They just got back from their second shoot, and we've got some really cool locations. I have no idea if I'm allowed to talk about what their locations are, but they're definitely doing a little bit more of the U.S. They're doing a lot more of the world in countries that it's been a while since we've been to. I know we just finished. I have no idea if this is announced yet, but if it isn't, oh well. We recently took on the 5th season of United Shades, which also just won an Emmy. So that's really exciting. That's a new show for us, and looking forward to, keep up that same great Emmy quality television. I know we're just wrapping up on a documentary called Fries. That's all about French fries. And that has been fun. There have been significantly less fries brought to the office than I was hoping. We definitely have a bunch of pilots. I know we're working on a long form documentary with the young skateboarder Brighton Zuner and her trip to the Olympics. And we've got another Netflix show that is running around the world, going to crazy locations, talking about like the interconnectivity of life. And it's exciting.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of work ahead of you and you're going to be really busy. So I will not take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ryan. This has been an absolute pleasure.
And I will say to anybody listening, if you are at all interested in being a documentary cinematographer, the best thing you could do is look up everything 0.0 has ever shot and watch all of it. It is all beautiful and great. Thanks again for coming on.
Ooh, yes. One last thing.
Yes.
I don't know how many people know this. There is a season of Mind of a Chef that's just on Facebook Watch.
What?
I know. I
love that show, and I didn't know that.
It's one of the tragedies. It's about like a year old or so, but it's still like, I mean, how many people know that Facebook has like its own television platform? So go in, watch Mind of a Chef. It's a whole new like adventure, culinary awesomeness.
That's very cool. Yeah, we will find that. We'll put a link to all the stuff that we can link to in the show notes. So yeah, if you're listening to this, check out the show notes and watch this stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Lensrentals podcast. If you have any questions or comments, let us know at podcast@lensrentals.com. I'll leave you with this quote, the author I do not know. Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Editing is knowing which ones to keep.